In this video, we're going to talk about HR trends. What is coming up over the next few years that we should be prepared for? That's coming up right now. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams, the host of HR Shop Talk. On the show, you get expert insight into anything that has to do with HR. I encourage you to subscribe to the show or podcast to keep learning from my guests. Today, my guest is Melanie Peacock. Melanie is an HR professor, an HR consultant. She's a keynote speaker, and recently she became a fellow with the CPHR Alberta. That's the association here. I'm delighted to have her. Hi, Melanie. How are you?
Hi, Andrea. I am well, and I'm very excited to be here today and looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. Me too. All right. So we're going to talk about HR trends. But before we do that, many of us in HR are mired in the day-to-day, and I imagine lots of the audiences too. So how do you prepare yourself for the future?
Well, I love your statement, because just being mired in the day-to-day is actually one way that we prepare for the future. You can't prepare for the future if you're not doing well today. It's almost like financial planning. You have to be able to, yes, think ahead, plan for your fingers crossed retirement, plan for buying a house, think of any major purchases. Right? That's how I equate it. But all the financial planning in the future does no good to you if you can't pay your bills today. If you end up not being able to survive in the moment. So that is one way that we plan for the future, is by continuing to do the hard work now to make sure that we're attending to our own mental and physical being while we do so. But we need to make sure that we're doing what needs to be done in the present. One of the other things, Andrea, that does, in addition to building credibility and contributing to organizational success and contributing to other people's success, which is a great part of one of the many great things we do as HR professionals. But what it does is it signals and gives us cues as to what will be happening in the future. The work we do today will often hold those hidden gems and those messages that when here's another tip, take the time to be silent and think and reflect. Notice I'm really slowing down because I have to force myself, full disclosure and vulnerability, I have to force myself to do that. One of my friends uses the term ruminate, and I like that. She says, you need to ruminate on these things. So the work today will often, if we really take the time to think about what it is we're doing and how we're contributing, we'll hold those cues to what the future needs will be. Last but not least, the other thing that the work that we do now, it sets us up as credible, trusted resources for those around us. We talk a lot about the future, and you and I are going to talk about some trends, but people won't care about what we're saying is happening in the future. They won't let us help mold and guide their future and our organization's future if we're not trusted now. People will often come to me and say, hey, how do I get employees to buy into this? Or how do I get leaders to listen to me? Or how do I do this? If they're not listening to you now, they're not going to listen to what you want for the future or what you foresee in the future.
That was amazing. I love that. So much of us just end up talking about the future and what we can't do. And instead of focusing on the present, despite, of course, all this talk about being present and everything. So that was amazing, but let's talk about those trends and what to look forward to. So first, I want you to list them, and then we'll talk about each of them. And I'm going to write them down as you talk.
Perfect. So I actually heard a term the other day. I can't take credit for it, but I love this term, and it really does encompass or show us one of the top trends: radical flexibility for work. I'm also going to call it imploding the work structure. So, that's one. We'll talk more about that.
Yes.
2, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Now, some people listening will go rolling their eyes and say, oh, she didn't really say that, right? That's not the future. That's here now. But things we have to do to make that meaningful and actually make it happen are a future trend. So we'll revisit that. 3, renegotiating the psychological contract between employers and employees. We talk a lot about the Great Resignation, but we need to delve down a little bit. And the future trend is actually about that psychological contract, the relationship between the organizations or the employers and those that work there or the employees. And fourth, I'll give one more, is automation. We talk about AI, we talk about blockchain technology. I'm going to throw in, I'm such an academic. Hey, you ask for one thing and I have sub-points under each one, but under that automation is also using data properly. So you've written them down. You ask me in any order you want, Andrea, and I'll happy to expand on each of those points.
Okay, well, I love the list, and there are things I've been hearing on the show on a fairly regular basis. And so I'm happy to have a concise conversation about each of them. So let's just do it in order, though. Radical flexibility. Talk to me about that.
So as we're returning to on-site work, and notice I didn't say as we return to work. I really care about words. We've all been working. So let's not call it return to work. Let's call it return to on-site work. And what I'm hearing from students, colleagues, customers in the research that I read is it's a mishmash. How's that? It's a mosaic. So to try and think that one size is going to fit all is not going to serve us any good at all. The future trend is flexibility, because you can't say, well, everybody should do 2 days on-site, 3 days remotely. Or everybody should choose 3 days out of the 5-day work week, and then the other 2 would be offsite. We really need to drill down. One, what is the role involved? So this is going to be what I'm calling the great revisitation of job analysis. We really, as HR people, this is where the future is, are going to have to understand how to do strategic and effective job analysis. So we understand the roles that are within the organization, how they act and interact with one another. The roles, not the people, right? How does the work effectively get done? And from there, we can parse down and say, yes, it is possible for this role to be potentially hybrid, or maybe it's not. Maybe it can be fully offsite, maybe not. But it's going to have a lot of flexibility. Then we add who's doing that role and what are their needs based on what can be done in that role to still fulfill customer requirements, achieve business objectives, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a whole, I call it the Rubik's Cube, right? We're going to have to twist and turn and make sure that it all comes together as a lovely puzzle.
Yeah.
But to just say one size, let's do this. The future is going to be really being flexible. Look, I'm a big believer in policies, procedures, guidelines, because it promotes fairness, transparency, equity, good communication. But we're going to have to implode those policies too, and have a lot of flexibility. In fact, the policy itself could be, we need to be flexible, but here's how we'll determine the flexibility. Then that might sound like a contradiction, right? I'm talking about structured flexibility. It's a bit of a paradox, structured flexibility, but that's part of blowing up, imploding work structure and where and how we work. Because again, another quote I heard, and I just love it. Work isn't a place, work is what we do. It's a process.
So the next thing on the list was diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And you confronted up front that people will say, well, we're already there. How is this a trend? So tell me, how is it a trend?
The trend is going to be making it matter, making it meaningful. Okay, so I'll say right now it matters.
Yeah.
To a level. I think we can make it matter more.
Yeah.
And that involves educating people, training, having vulnerable, candid conversations, having leadership model the behavior, and having some tough conversations, holding ourselves and those around us accountable. That's about making it matter. Making it meaningful is going to be having to track. What are we doing? Like, are we actually changing our stats? And look, I'm not talking about quotas. I am not a fan of quotas. I'm talking about, though, we have to measure if we're making any change. And if we're not, and there's valid reasons, then we need to know that. It's about information. But if we say we want to make change, then we need to measure, are we making change? That's going to be a trend. And figuring out how to do that in meaningful, pragmatic, outcome-oriented ways, which, sounds very, oh, that's very nice and very robotic. When you start to dig deep under it, the trend is candid conversations, vulnerability, exploring our processes and our procedures in organizations, all the way from the way we recruit and select people, to reward and compensate them, to performance management, to training and promotion opportunities we offer, all the way to seeing them on the other side of an employment relationship. We're like archaeologists. We're going to have to start digging a little deeper, and we're going to find some interesting fossils, like old remnants of ways of doing things, old practices, but those can inform us. They can be valuable. So we don't want to just throw it all out, but we're going to have to do some deep digging.
That's great. Okay, our next trend was the psychological contract between the employer-employee. And I said at the beginning of this that I had heard about all of these before as I've gone through all these episodes, but that's one I have not. So tell me about that.
Well, it's so interesting. I'll say with this and all the other trends I've mentioned, they're not new. Spoiler alert. It's just the way we frame them and think about them that is making it a trend, or making it, oh, I'm doing air quotes. We know it's trouble when I'm doing air quotes, makes it new. Right. So the psychological contract, a lot of people might think of this at its very basic level, Andrea, as employment branding. Why would someone want to come and work at your organization? You know, we hear a lot about the great resignation taking place. What is it that someone wants in return for working for you? You know, we give our time. Yes. Okay. In academia, we call it, pardon the expression, bums in seats. And we can say that for workers, right? We put our bums in seats, wherever they're located. But that's not what we give. Really, we give our heart and soul. We give our passion. We give our energy. We give our intellect. Time is a beautiful resource that we give. But underneath that, there's so many other things. So in return, employees want more than just a fair day's pay.
Right.
What else do they really want? What's that psychological contract? Okay, so let's remove total rewards, which is important, but let's remove it from the equation for a moment. Do I want respect? Do I want to be trusted? Do I want autonomy? Do I want creativity? Do I want the ability to take risks? Do I want a different amount of skills and challenge in my job? These are the things that there's, again, not one pat answer to. But these are the things that we're going to have to explore deeper and deeper. And the future is showing that HR professionals are going to continue to lead and guide this way. You know, Hackman and Oldham have a theory called the motivating potential score. Listeners can look it up, when you're having your geek moment. Yeah. And it talks about how to motivate people. And it's great information. It's got 5 elements that are important. But I'm going to challenge everybody that the future is more than that. The psychological contract, we're going to have to delve deeper, especially as now we've come full circle, that when we challenge and implode work, that's going to, all the way back to point 1, that's going to impact the psychological contract and what we need. We look at, and I'm speaking with, when you're at home raising children, what kind of flexibility, what do I need you to show me as my employer? Long before the pandemic, long before any of the issues we're talking about now existed, I used to share with my students and my clients, and I still believe this, with 99% of the people, if you give to them, if you show them courtesy, respect, trust, you get that back from them a tenfold. And you want to set up those parameters and that foundation now, long before you ever need it. And organizations that did that are the ones that were able to continue and thrive, even, dare I say, thrive during the pandemic.
Okay. Automation. I have talked about this one on the show. Tell me about automation as an HR trend.
So I'm going to say automation is a business trend. So what HR needs to do to support that is have an understanding about how it's impacting the work that people do. So are people still getting satisfaction, motivation? Are they using their skills to the best of their abilities in doing the work that's required, as some of it, if not all of it, becomes automated? And when I say all of it, then they'll create new jobs. There's lots of research that shows automation will not be the dearth of person kind. What it'll do is when we automate things, it opens up other possibilities and other roles and other jobs that can be done. But that's what HR's role in automation is going to be. It's not so much the automation of HR. I've seen a lot of that over the last 30 years. Yes, I've been in HR for more than 30 years now. I've seen a lot of that automation moving to self-service, moving to online dashboards, moving to all of that we've seen. But what's going to happen is other people's work is going to be automated, and HR needs to then say, how do we make sure that we're creating meaningful work, that we're providing the right competencies and upskilling? How are we making sure that our rewards and recognition programs are keeping up with the demands and the new outputs that we're expecting from people? So those are just some examples.
If you found this exciting, subscribe to see all the episodes and comment. Today's question is, which of Melanie's trends are you seeing in your workplace? Describe it. Tell us about it in the comment section. Just then, you were talking about different skills and that we need to prepare people in the organization to have different skills. We're going to need more of another skill and less of something else. So how does HR get ready for that? What skills do we need?
It's such a great question, because so often we as the HR professionals, we're always taking care of other people's needs that we forget our own. And I don't want to give the cliche, put your oxygen mask on before you put someone else's on. We could talk about pouring from an empty vessel. You know, we hear all of this time reminding us that we need to take care of ourselves. So one, develop your own training and development purpose and plan. That's my call to everybody listening in today. Step back and do what you do for others for yourself. Now, often though, and I'm as guilty of it, we have our own blind spots when it comes to ourselves. So ask people around you, but be prepared for the answers. That opens up vulnerability, and you may, spoiler alert, hear some things that you don't want to hear. What do you mean I'm not good at X? Or what do you mean I need to do more Y? Okay, so really look to other resources and make a plan for yourself. It isn't just going to happen. Right? Each of us will have our own development needs as HR professionals, because we all do very different roles in potentially very different environments or industries in very different organizations. So there's not one, okay, everybody needs this. Now, I will contradict myself. What we do need, though, is the ability for some insight and self-reflection and the ability to be agile. Now, how you develop that, though, what those skills or competencies look like, that's where the differences are. And the other thing we need to do is time to think. If we can keep our organizations and the people we work with ahead of a curve, it's just so dynamic for HR professionals. I always say that if we can avoid issues and avoid problems, as opposed to being the ones, I feel sometimes we need to put on the cape and we come running into the room. I'm here to save you. What happened? I'll fix it. Let's not do that. Let's stop it from happening in the first place. But the only way we can do that, the skills we need, it's not even a skill, it's time. We need to take time to think, reflect, again, think about what we're doing now and how that's going to impact the future. And then from there, you might find you need to develop specific skills and competencies as an HR professional. And we have lots of resources that guide us. So there's not one pat answer that I can give to everybody, other than make sure you do this for yourself. You deserve it. You need it. You're worth it.
So final question here. How do you think COVID is playing a role in all of these trends?
So what COVID and the pandemic have done, they've illuminated, they've shined a big light on things that need to be addressed. And as I shared with you earlier, none of this is really new. We just think it's new because we're describing it in different ways. What it's done is just really brought it all to the surface in more ways. And it's also elevated the importance of it. And the other thing I love is it's elevated the importance of this across organizations. So it's not just leaders and HR people that see it, it's employees. It's pervasive that people are understanding the importance of these issues. So the great challenge for HR professionals, and this is my call to action for everyone listening in, it's an opportunity actually, is let's capitalize on this momentum. Let's not lose the fact that all of these wonderful things that we do have been highlighted and illuminated, and the value we bring has really been just elevated. So let's not capitalize on that. Let's keep the momentum going.
So that was supposed to be my last question, but I have this question, and it's going to be poorly articulated right now, but how do you keep the momentum? I hear so often people talking about that we stepped up to the plate for this crisis, but now what?
So we have a voice. We need to continue to use a voice. We have to show courage, show vulnerability. And if we feel that we're not being heard at the table, then we need to speak up. We need to keep challenging the status quo. We need to share our expertise. We've shown the value we can provide, so we need to keep on keeping on. The other thing we need to do is continue to communicate to employees what our work is doing for them in the organization. Sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle. And, this is not saying, this isn't about hubris. We've been told it's very North American. Oh, be humble, don't boast, don't. But think about it like when you're in an interview. You want to go into an interview and you want to share your amazing skills and competencies and abilities, what you're going to bring to the organization. You don't want to come across as arrogant, but you want to come across as confident, right? And there can be a fine balance. We should be doing the same thing. We should treat every day at work, every project we do, we should treat it like an interview. What do I want people to know? It's not just about me. It's showing them what the work is contributing to the organization, and it continues to elevate our profession. So it isn't about self-promotion or bragging. I'm going to say it's our responsibility as HR professionals to make sure that we ring the bell and show people through our work the value of what we do. That's how we'll keep the momentum going.
All right. Well, that sounds like a great way to end this. Thanks, Melanie. I will be watching for these trends in the future. And in fact, I'm already seeing them. I did an episode on benefits trends, slightly different context and focus, but that link is right here. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.